going to talk about the best time of the year for hunting whitetails, and that is the rut. It's November, early November. If the rut has not already kicked off wherever it is you're hunting, it will be very soon. And so we have some things to talk about with regards to strategies and how you approach the whitetail woods this time of year and what you can do to increase your likelihood of success.
Okay.
So, what do you know about the whitetail rut, Matthew?
I know that it's when the does get basically chased all over town and then held down and violently sexually assaulted in order to procreate more animals. And these poor does just run around. That's why people get so angry when you kill does during rut, because they're just running, trying to escape the ever.
It did not go where I thought it was going to go. So, the rut is whenever your bucks are chasing and very active, seeking breeding does, right?
That's basically what I just said.
Yeah, but you said it way more violently. And
well, I mean, it is a violent
that's fine.
thing.
It's fine. But it's also a great time to take advantage of the bucks and their ridiculous behavior to get that buck you're after, or just get some meat in the freezer. So we're going to talk a little bit about what you can do to help make that happen.
And for those that don't hunt, they're just here for the whiskey part. When you see the uptick of, man, deer everywhere out here at night and people are hitting them and stuff, that's the rut.
Yeah, you see more deer
because they don't
dead
give
on the
a
side
shit.
of the road. Yeah, that's because they are out of their mind doing things they normally would not do. So the first thing you can do is sort of an obvious thing, but that's to hunt fresh sign. Now that's pretty much the case any time of the year. You know, if you can find fresh sign of where deer are, that's where you want to hunt. But particularly during the rut, you want to look for scrapes that are active that have licking branches. And a licking branch is just an overhanging branch over the scrape that deer will use to help leave scent, particularly bucks. They use the licking branch far more than the does do. With that being said, we'll touch a little bit more on scrapes later in this episode. I have a whole bunch of stuff about that. But so look for fresh sign, look for active scrapes, particularly with a licking branch, because bucks use licking branches more than does do, and that's a good sign, a good way to look for an active area where there's a buck. Get comfortable. You're gonna be in the tree stand for a while. Things happen during the rut that don't happen any other time of the year. Like we mentioned earlier, bucks are out of their mind with their hormones are crazy. They're running all over the place or all times of the day. So get comfortable, prepare to sit for a long time, and wait for things to happen, because they happen unexpectedly, out of nowhere, all times of the day.
Yeah, unplanned.
It's not like other times of the year where you can kind of predict that, you know, the buck's and deer gonna come to the field, you know, right around daybreak or as the sun is setting. Does are getting chased all over the woods, and bucks are cruising all over the place trying to catch a scent or following scent of breeding doe. So get comfortable, prepare to sit for a while, bring a book, bring some snacks, make sure you're prepared to be there for a while. Ooh. There you go. You've been practicing.
And then you can, that's when, like when you see people rattling for bucks and calling for bucks and making noise, now's the time of the year that works, because they're not thinking much other than the 3 Fs.
So that actually brings up, that's a good segue to another point that I had further down here, which is be vocal. This time of the year is better than probably any time to use a call and to be vocal or to rattle, whether you use shed antlers or you use some of those plastic rattling.
Yeah, that's what
things.
I have, the rattle bag.
Yeah, rattle bag. You can use any of those, but deer are, like I said, cruising for bucks. They're
cruising for does.
They're cruising for does and on the lookout for bucks, because they're being very competitive. They're competing for territory. They're competing for does. So if you get a dominant buck and you rattle and you make it appear as though there's a fight going on over some does, a dominant buck may be like, oh yeah? Not in my house.
He may just want to come look too.
Yeah, and they're social creatures, so it may just bring in deer out of curiosity.
They're nosy as shit.
Yeah, use calls. Don't be shy about it. Especially if you see deer, you see a buck chasing does. You can oftentimes call a buck off of a hot doe if you can mimic a more mature buck or a mating doe bleat. Is useful for that. So be vocal. Also use scents. This is the time of the year. Bucks are all over the place looking for scent, following scent. So use whatever your favorite scent is for doe and heat or estrus, whatever that brand calls it. To use it, you should have created mock scrapes earlier in the year, but it's still an okay time to put that kind of scent out and try to get try to get bucks coming to those things. So use scents, hunt does. Obviously, that's what the bucks are after. So if you know where the does are, there's a good chance that's where bucks are going to be. If you have and you can pinpoint through cameras or just knowing your property, specifically doe bedding areas, you want to hunt on the downwind side of that, because bucks will cruise areas that they and try to find the downwind. Try to find themselves downwind of does to locate their scent. And if you know that there's a doe bedding area, you can position yourself downwind of that area. You can intercept bucks trying to work their way into those bedding areas. So look for does, look for those downwind side of doe bedding areas if you can identify those.
Do you make any doe bleats this time of the year?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I will. So I called the buck once off of a doe that he was chasing the doe, and I used a combination that I had seen on YouTube where I used a grunt, like a really deep, long grunt, which is supposed to be a mating buck, and alternated one of those Primos doe bleat cans to simulate a buck and doe kind of mixing it up, whether they were just chasing or actually doing the dirty. It was enough to get this. It wasn't a super mature buck, but it was a buck who was out of his mind with what was going on in the rut enough to stop chasing that doe and come in my direction. So it was pretty cool. You can do a lot with sounds and both doe and buck calls.
I just very rarely use any of it. It's I do use our grunt tube, but even then I'm not super pushy with it.
It's also hard a little bit in our
just where we hunt.
We hunt, it's very thick, so sometimes it's hard to see. So you're doing it blind a lot of times.
Yeah.
So
up in Appalachia, I'll use a rattle.
That's a good spot. It's a little more open, and you can that sound will carry down, especially when you're in the mountains, using those the terrain, to your advantage. So
I'm also looking forward to kind of some of these leaves falling off, so that we can really see stuff
and hear. I can't tell you how many times during this time of year you hear things coming before, because a doe will be 30 yards ahead of a buck, jumping and running, kind of trying to stay ahead, and then that buck will come cruising behind, grunting and taking its time. They're tired because they're running all day long. Bucks will lose, I forget what percentage of their body fat during the rut, but it's a lot. You can tell the health of a whitetail by the amount of fat that's around its kidneys. And during this time of year, you can often pull the kidneys out of a doe and it'll be covered with this white, visceral, healthy fat. And then a buck's will be almost completely bare of any fat, just the kidneys. And it's just a good indication of how much they're running, how little they're eating, and their overall health. They run themselves down a lot during the rut.
I know they lose a lot of weight during the rut for sure.
So
they also don't have to be as bulk in the spring.
True.
As the doe would.
Yeah, that's true. So be flexible, right? It's the rut, as we've mentioned a dozen times, and things are going to change. Does may change. If you identify that there's action happening on another side, another area, another pinch point or a funnel, or somewhere where you didn't anticipate, you need to be willing to adjust later that afternoon. If you're sitting all day or maybe the next day, and don't get too stuck. A lot of us are in the habit of setting up a couple stands, and that's just where we hunt, and we kind of leave them there. This is a good time of year to be flexible. Use the climber, use the saddle. You use some sort of setup that allows you to move around and adapt to what the whitetail are doing.
Oh, did you go into a saddle yet?
Not yet. I need to.
Do you plan to?
I do. It's just one of those things that's gotten super popular over the last year and a half, and as a result, there's other companies popping up, and more people are trying them. So I'm reading a lot and watching getting people's opinions. I need to just dive in and just do it.
Well, we know people with one that have hit us up and said, "Hey, I hunt on a saddle."
Yeah,
all the time.
Yep, it looks super comfortable, which it doesn't. At first glance, it doesn't seem like it would be comfortable, but I want to try it out.
It just feels like all that tension being on your legs, It
also the idea of just leaning back and sort of hanging on a single rope. I've got to get that kind of freaks me out a little bit, but I don't know. It's weird.
I'd be fine with it, I think.
All right. So be flexible and just hunt. Like, get in the woods. You've got to hunt. It's a numbers game. The more you hunt, the more likely you are to have encounters with deer, the more likely you are to kill a deer. You can't do like we do and find yourselves too busy to go and making excuses not to get out there. You just have to get out there. It's easy to let work and life and everything's kind of consume you, but you're not going to shoot a deer sitting from the couch or on the couch. So
it's just hard.
Just hunt. It is. And the last thing.
Why don't you just hunt?
all the reasons I just listed. And then the last thing is to have a good whiskey on hand, because there's no better way to celebrate than having a good whiskey.
What's a good whiskey?
Whatever you like to drink. All right. So that was my spiel on rut strategies. We could make a video, a 20-minute video on any single one of those topics. So I'm just hitting the high notes here. Take it, leave it. I don't care. That's what's worked for me in the past. That's what the pros suggest. That's what all my research pointed to. I tried to pick the things that I know worked for me and that other people also selected or mentioned. There's some other stuff that people listed that I'm like, this shit doesn't work down here. So I didn't put it in there.
I feel like there's a lot of things that work other places that
for sure
definitely aren't gonna work down here.
Absolutely.
That's the other thing to know too, is if you're this goes for both ways. If you're looking at whiskey strategies or whitetail strategies, it's going to change by area. Some places don't have other things, and therefore the deer are going to act differently. The liquor store is going to act differently. Liquor store owner. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of stuff that I read about deer, and they're just talking about these huge monster deer out west and stuff, and it's just not the case down here in the south.
Also, certain land features that people talk about, focus on these and that, and focus on this sort of geographical feature, and you just have to find what works and what's available for where you're hunting. Because sometimes they're, hunting a ridge. Well, what's a ridge for me or us down here is different than what's a ridge for somebody out in Kentucky.
Yeah, a ridge here for us is an old home site where it's like a 1.5 foot elevation over what's normally flat.
Exactly.
Yeah, or one of those levee walls.
Yeah,